Please join me in welcoming the director of Moonlight, Barry Jenkins.
And from the cast of Moonlight, Janelle Monáe, Mr. Andre Holland, Trevante Rhodes, Mahershala Ali, my man Ashton Sanders, and introducing Alex J. Hibbert, and of course the playwright Terrell McCraney.
Barry, you've made a beautiful film. You have an incredible group of people who've made this film with you. When I first saw the film, the thing that really struck me most, among many things, was I've never seen this before in a movie. I've never seen this story told. I've never seen these characters paid such attention to. So can you start by just telling us a little bit about the story and why you wanted to tell this particular story?
You want to take that, bro?
It is very, thank you so much, Barry, for making me talk first. After I have snot hanging out of my nose. The origins of Moonlight come from a place highly, there we go, I can do this. Theater training. A highly biographical place for me. One day I was outside trying to learn how to ride my bike. I had just taken off the training wheels and by myself, I kicked them off. I wanted to learn how to ride. And I was failing pretty badly. And it was actually the first over there on 16th and 62nd, 63rd Street, where the first scene of this happens, or was shot. And I was trying to get my bike and trying to get it, and I couldn't, and I was falling. And this drug dealer got off his crate, and came and was like, "Get back on the bike." And he ran with me down the street, pretending to stand behind me until I learned how to ride a bike. And I never forgot that. So when my own father stepped in to try to teach me how to ride a bike, I had to pretend like I didn't know, because this person had the generosity of spirit to reach out and do it. And so all of my life I have been, had these snatches, this patchwork of generosity lended to me from unlikely people and in some pretty ungenerous circumstances. And it just became important to me to put those together and try to tell that story as best I could. And what you see before you is actually me trying to figure out how to tell that story, and then Barry seeing it and going, "Oh, I have the language, I have the tools, I have the know-how to make these people stand up." And I will never forgive you for that. Because I miss that drug dealer. I miss him dearly. And to be able to sit with him for at least 45 minutes is a gift, you know? So, thank you.
Barry, can you speak to why this story for your second feature as well, and maybe just talk a little bit about the process of casting the roles for it as well?
Yeah, so Terrell's piece in Moonlight, Black Boys Look Blue came to me through a mutual acquaintance. And Terrell and I had not met at that point, and yet we grew up blocks from one another, went to the same schools, and both our mothers went through the struggle with addiction that you see the lovely Naomi Harris portray in the film. And so when I read it, and the person that gave it to me, these guys, Andrew Havia and Lucas Leva, they're part of this group called Borscht, they knew enough about me and enough about Terrell to know that there was a through line between our two stories. And it's funny because I've heard Terrell describe the play as sort of this, the coalescing of these memories. And it's funny because his memories felt like memories of my memories. And so right away, I just saw this place where, I've always considered myself an ally for people who identify as LGBTQ, and yet I never thought I could write a character that had that as a foundational element of their identity, where there was so much that just sort of like blended between our biographies that I thought this is, I want to step up to this challenge, and as an ally, I don't want to be a passive ally, I want to be an active ally. And so I took the play and I began adapting it. And Terrell and I talked about it together for a while, and then he became a MacArthur genius and got very, very busy. And so I flew to Miami and asked his blessing to take the piece and the discussions we had and translate it into the structure that we have here. And then the casting of it kind of just, our casting director is right there. Yessi Ramirez, this woman right here. The first decision I made, because the play was nonlinear, was to make it linear and to sort of split it between these three chapters. I'd seen this film called 3 Times by Ho Xiao Shin, and I love the way, yes, for Ho Xiao Shin. And I just love the way you could explore a couple in that format. And so speaking to Yessi and Adela and Jeremy and Didi and all the producers, I said, well, I'm pretty sure I want to cast 3 different actors to play this part. It's the same character, but he's become different people. So we will cast different persons to play the same character. And what I always wanted was them to have the same feeling. And it's funny, all three sitting together right there. And I feel like they have the same eyes. And as someone who studied Walter Murchis in the blink of an eye, I just thought if these guys could have the same eyes, that would be enough to spiritually get you through the first story to the second story to the third, and feel like you're on a journey with the same character. So that was kind of how it went down.
I'd like to hear from your cast now in terms of bringing this film to life, embodying these characters. If you could talk a little bit about one of the qualities that I found in the film, which is love, which is the love that the characters share with each other. And that can sometimes be a very vulnerable thing to express on screen. I wonder if, let's start with those who have microphones with you, if you could talk a little bit about performing the... I don't think that's fair. Hand it back. Good boy. That's good. That's the way to do it. If you could talk a little bit about building these characters, performing from the prospect, from the idea of the love that you were giving to each other.
Well, in terms of approaching Juan, I felt like the most important thing was to connect to his heart, and I think Juan, from the moment he really connects to Chiron, I think he sees a little piece of himself. I think he understands that this young man is a bit of an island. And because Juan is Cuban, and he's a very dark-skinned Cuban, and so I think that he identified with black culture and tried to assimilate in a certain way, but he's not African-American. And the vast majority of Cubans in Miami are fair-skinned, and so you're dealing with somebody who doesn't fit in. And so his otherness that I think he recognizes very early on is about trying to make this, because he's at a point where he's a grown man now and he's passed through so many things, and I'm sure as we all do, no matter how old you are, you're still trying to process and still fit in your body in your own way. But I think he sees and recognizes very early on that this young man needs help.
Sorry. It's all right.
So I love the character.
Janelle, Naomi, could you talk a little bit about the work that you did in the film?
Good evening. The work, whenever I go into anything, I go into it because I believe in it. I'm moved by it. And when I read the script, I cried 2 to 3 times. And when I was most captivated was when I got the opportunity to know Chiron, Little, and Black, because they reminded me of my little cousins. They reminded me of my nephew. They reminded me of a future son. And I saw the entire cast in the community that I grew up in. I grew up in Wyandotte County, Kansas. And I had parents who dealt with addiction. I had cousins who sold drugs. And for me, when I started to think about Teresa and I started to read more into her character, I saw myself. That's the role that I played in my community to my cousins. The older cousin, younger cousin that was just there to listen as they were trying to figure out life, figure out their sexuality, figure out, what does this all mean to love yourself for who you are? And I think that's the main thing that I wanted, is I wanted to be that one person that listened to him as he was coming into his own, as he was asking questions. I didn't want to judge him. I didn't want him to feel like I was anything other than someone who loved him, a rock for him, a shoulder for him, and just someone that listened. So that's where I started, as a listener.
I think I had real issues with taking on the character of Paula to begin with, because I always said in my career that I was only going to portray positive images of Black women, because I think there are enough negative ones in TV and film already. And I always drew the line at, playing a crack addict. But then I read this incredible script that moved me so much, and also I saw the work of Barry in Medicine for Melancholy, and I thought it was one of the best films that I've ever seen in my entire life. And I really wanted to be part of this project, but then I had this issue with this whole crack addiction and playing a crack addict. And basically, Barry talked me around. And also, through my own research, I realized that I had so much judgment about what it means to be a crack addict. In my mind, they were just crack addicts. And in fact, obviously, with any form of addiction, there's a beating heart underneath it. And everybody deserves compassion and understanding. And through my journey of research, I found so much compassion for Paula. And I realized that with her drug addiction, she's really almost overtaken by this kind of demon. And that's what drugs do to you. You lose part of yourself. But underneath that, she's still there. She's just lost and in need. And we are all, searching for things to kind of escape our pain. We just do it in very different ways. We don't all turn to drugs, and Paula's is drugs. And by doing my research, I just really found compassion for her story, and I actually became incredibly excited about the prospect of telling it, because I wanted to tell it in as many layers as I possibly could. I wanted to show how she was overtaken by drugs, but also how she still loved her son, how she also had this self-hatred. There were so many different, she was an incredibly complex character, and I wanted to capture all of it.
Noticed that the film was shot in 35 millimeter. What made you make that choice?
Wrong. It was shot at Alexa 235. And we wanted to shoot Alexa, we wanted the latitude. There's this great scene in the middle where Ashton walks out to the ocean, and we just happened to shoot that on a full moon night. And because we shot Alexa, we could expose him, and then we got in post, and holy shit, the moon is on the water. I couldn't write that, and I couldn't plan for that. But because of the latitude and the Alexa, we figured that we would get some nice surprises like that. We also wanted to shoot 235 CinemaScope to sort of, I think somebody mentioned, I think Ali said, we wanted to isolate the characters in all the expanse of Miami. There's so much green grass where we grew up and open sky, and yet these guys are incredibly lonely. So, not 35, bruh, but I'll tell my DP, you said so. He will thank you.
Nice one. All right. Other questions for the cast or for Barry? Can you talk about the formal elements and how they communicate the emotion of the film?
Yeah, so my DP and I, shooting on the Alexa, not 35. We wanted the film to be immersive, and you know, Terrell and I have spoken about this. The movie's like a fever dream. You know, it's not neorealism. It's sort of like there's this heightened sort of quality to it that to me comes from the characters. So I'm sorry, I should look up here. So we knew we wanted to do some things that we felt like were motivated by the character sort of disorientation and things like that. And we also, I didn't want to tell this story and have it be, you know, in film, the camera's here, the camera's there. It's always outside the actors. I wanted to immerse you guys, the audience, in the story at very choice moments by placing you between the actors. There's these moments of transference where we go directly POV, where the actors are looking literally right at you guys. Because again, I didn't want to dig down into the shit of how I grew up and not have you guys have to wallow in the shit of how I grew up. But at choice moments, I think, again, when there's transference between the characters, and James and I, the DP, you know, we talked about it, because if I make a formal decision like that, I want to root it in something. And right now, we're in the theater, and everything we do goes back to the fucking theater, you know? The audience is there, the actors are here. There's one lens, your view, on this point. So in theater, you know, the actors, we're doing our scene, blah, blah, blah. And then Hamlet will get up, and he'll turn from the other actors, and he will do just like this. So to me, it went right back to the birth of everything we're doing, that you guys should look right into my actors' eyes at choice moments of transference. So that was kind of how we went about it on Alexa, not 35. And I think it's just because for Terrell and I mean, I feel I keep speaking for us. I feel like I see myself in this film in a lot of places, and I wanted you guys to feel what it felt like to be us growing up in this world.
But I also think, yes, sorry. I have no idea technically what he did. He made magic. But I do know that when you watch films, you see a film that is indicative of, you know, London at a time, or indicative of New York or LA at a time. And what this film does that no other I've seen is capture Miami in a way that no other has. And a part of the elements that he is talking about in terms of the sound and the thickness of the air and the colors, the brightness, you kind of can't have, you have a, excuse my French, shitty day, and then yet you walk out into paradise. You have to, something clicks for a second, something goes slightly awry, and for him to capture that, I think is what you're feeling. There's an essence in that that's otherworldly, right? You know, you go to, I mean, I'm just saying, like, you know, you find,
I can't say that about my own shit. But
okay, yeah, so I'll say it for you. So, appreciate it.
Can you talk a little bit about creating the final sequence, particularly the diner sequence, which I think is so powerful, both in terms of the performances between you know, your actors, Andre, and I also just want to ask about what you were doing technically, because there is a kind of an intimacy in that scene that is a little bit alarming.
Yeah, you know, we actually lost a day shooting that sequence. We thought we shoot it over 3 days or 3 nights. We shot it over 2 nights. And I remember apologizing to Andre and Travante and asking, especially like the last 2/3 of it, can we run it all at once, you know? And so what you're watching is pretty much like, you know, it's almost like Minju. There are unbroken moments that we just run all the way through on these zoom lenses. And these guys were great, you know, their chemistry was just so potent. I would love to hear them talk about what it was like to shoot those sequences.
I'm sorry, what are we talking about?
I mean, he basically, when you guys are in the diner, it's really, really intimate. And I remember,
thank you,
not
Barry.
pulling a
Well, thank
fastball, but we were gonna have more time to do that. And I remember we were all very tired, and I came to y'all and I said, do you mind if we just do this, instead of block shooting it, if we just shoot it? And you guys both agreed. And at that point, I kind of stepped out, and you guys just did what you did. So Mr. Bailey wants to know how you guys felt doing that.
Well, thank you guys for being here. It was so great to, thank you, seriously. I mean, first of all, to that point, it was for me hugely liberating, I think, to just sort of go for it, because we had talked about it a bit, and having done our own individual work on the story, we sort of knew what the architecture of it was. So it felt great as an actor to just sort of dive in and go on the ride. As far as the chemistry, I think that probably comes from listening, the quality with which these characters listen to each other.
For me, I think just the relationship that I have with Andre personally, me looking up to him the way I do, and me really appreciating him for who he is, it really translated to the character, because I feel like Sharon saw so much of what he wanted to be in Kevin, and it just related to real life. So it was really simple for me to kind of translate that.
Thank you, Trey.
All right, just time for.
It's like way back here.
Okay. Question is for Janelle about using theatricality in her music, and was that a natural transition to acting?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I don't look at myself as like a musician or an actor. I look at myself as a storyteller and someone who wants to tell universal stories in unforgettable ways. And I use music as a tool, I use acting as a tool. And growing up, like Terrell, he's written these amazing plays. I was in the Young Playwrights Roundtable where I would write short stories and the local actors would perform them. So that's kind of what you see, just my upbringing in Kansas City and having a passion for just being a part of these universal stories and using science fiction and using realism and using music, whatever it is, to tell these stories that just really tug at your heart and make you feel something. You know, and I think that's pretty much it, but it has to be the right story as well. And I think when I read Moonlight and when I read Hidden Figures, both those scripts touched my heart. You know, I cried and I was emotionally attached to them, and once you have my heart, I'm all in.
All right, last question is right here. The question is for the two young actors. How did it feel to be in the film and to see yourself up on the big screen?
For me, it felt so good. At first, I didn't know how to like express myself without talking, but Barry here,
Yes.
he said, just feel it. So my face just went with what's going on, and then bam.
I cannot follow up on that. That's crazy. Wow, I don't think you ever get used to seeing yourself on film, especially in a character like this. There's so much going on. And when creating this character and filming it, you're not aware of what you're doing. The camera is in front of you, so you're just acting. You are the character. This is my first time seeing this film in its full. Right, y'all know what I'm saying. It was very emotional for me. Like I feel like crying right now, so I'm gonna stop. Honestly.
Thank you so much. We are Unfortunately, we're out of time. There's a lot more I'd want to ask all of you, but I'll just ask you to please join me in thanking Barry Jenkins and the team that made Moonlight.